Hey there, sports fans, and welcome back. We're coming at you from a hot and humid weekend
Yes.
in SEC country, all across the South. Brutal conditions, especially for those afternoon games,
Yep.
as we saw some glaring examples of this past weekend. But hopefully, we have a cold front coming through, which for us in the South, Darren, means it's going to be in the 80s.
That's right, which is still other people might think that sounds crazy, but that's a beautiful thing. I'll take it. No complaints. 80s is, that's as crazy as it sounds, especially growing up in Tennessee, 80s, that's I'm gonna start pulling out long sleeves, man. It's starting to get cool.
The other day, I was in a building with someone and they said, it's freezing in here. And I went over to the nearest thermostat. It was 74 degrees. We have another full weekend of games to talk about as the season it seems to just be getting ramped
Oh
up,
yeah.
Darren. So let's jump right into our three takeaways from last weekend. Darren, what's your number one takeaway?
I'm going to make some predictions as part of the takeaways this week, but I'm going to I'm going to put that on the back end. The first thing I want to do is talk to Missouri fans. Now, I know what most people are thinking is, oh yeah, Vanderbilt. I'm not even going to go there. I'm going to talk about preseason expectations for Missouri versus where we are in the season. This is not looking like the Missouri, especially offense, that everyone was potentially excited about. You were looking at an offense that does have a little over 2,000 yards of total offense, but they are missing a lot of the explosive potential that I think people were excited about when you think about Luther Burden, Brady Cook, and Theo Weiss. If you would have said that at this point during the season, with all of the preseason hype, you're going to be, 4 weeks in playing, mostly people that you should have a really good time with playing against. And Luther Burden is going to only have 257 yards receiving. Theo Weiss is only going to have 287 yards receiving. And between the four of them, between the two of them, there's only 4 touchdowns. And all four of those are Luther Burden. Theo Weiss does not have a touchdown reception at this point. And we're talking about, playing teams like Vanderbilt, Murray State, Buffalo, and Theo Weiss doesn't have a touchdown reception yet. That does not sound anything like the offense that we were talking about in preseason. I can't say this is what's off, but I can say something is off. The explosion of that offense is not there. Timing between the receivers and Brady Cook, timing of even Brady Cook just in the backfield as a whole, just something is amiss. And Missouri fans, I mean, it was pretty obvious this past week. I mean, I'm a Vanderbilt fan. I was very, very excited about everything that happened. But the bottom line is the offense failed to capitalize on moments they had and left Vanderbilt in the game. Vanderbilt had negative offense in the second quarter,
Hmm.
yet went into the halftime with a manageable game. That is a lack of performance on the offensive side of the ball for Missouri, not Vanderbilt doing something. I mean, yes, Vanderbilt's defense is obviously improved over last year with Coach Lee taking the reins of the defense, but this is still a defense that allowed 36 points against Georgia State last week. Okay. We should not be talking about it being a manageable game because the Missouri offense is failing to capitalize on moments that they should have done. So, Missouri fans, this is not hair on fire, run around screaming kind of emergency. But I think it's a moment where you take a pause and go, okay, what's off and can they get it fixed? And I don't know the answer to that, but I know it's something you should be paying attention to at this point.
Great observations. Missouri definitely looks like a different team at
Yep.
this point in the season compared to last season.
Yep. Absolutely. What's your
My
first?
first
Oh,
takeaway.
sorry, I interrupted you
Oh,
to ask you to answer the question you
well,
were already answering.
well, let me rewind, Darren, and go ahead and ask your question.
Only if you make the noise. You didn't. All right.
Where's the rewind lever?
So I got me feeling.
There we go. We're high tech here at the Brew and Shaver
That's
Sports Podcast.
exactly right. We're something. We're tech. Maybe is that. All right. What's your first
That might
takeaway?
be too generous.
You might be right. What's your first takeaway, Ben?
Darren, thank you for asking.
Well,
Uh, my first takeaway is what a great debut game for Oklahoma. I know it was not the result that Sooner fans were hoping for, but what a great atmosphere. Tennessee, Oklahoma. Those schools are not rivals, but it felt like a rivalry game. The energy in that stadium was amazing. I loved it. How many? I mean, I'm still hearing Rocky Top and Boomer Sooner in my head because we heard those over and over all night long. The OU fans came out big. They came out, and you could see the passion they have for their football team. Tennessee fans came to Norman. They showed up big. This was classic SEC. I don't know how you can look at this game and say, wow, the SEC is right. It just means more. Absolutely phenomenal atmosphere. And Darren, that's about the loudest I've seen or heard an OU game. Now I know when they go down in the Cotton Bowl and they play Texas, it's really loud.
it's
But
a new level.
you didn't get that level playing Kansas or Kansas State or Iowa State. That was a whole new level. And
Mm-hmm.
kudos to OU fans for showing out and representing. What a great debut for an SEC. They just ran into, Darren, a buzzsaw of a defense.
Absolutely.
25-15 was the final score. That Tennessee defensive line is legit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, I'm going to go check the LSU schedule again. Oh, good goodness. We do not play Tennessee this year. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for answered
Thank you. Thank
prayers.
you.
But that defense is stout. On the other hand, OU didn't look too shabby on defense either.
That's exactly right.
They brought a strong defense, and Heupel, there was debate. Why isn't Heupel putting his foot to the pedal here? Is he finding the best way to win? Or maybe the OU defense had something to do with it. I know I read on a message board, and I shouldn't go on message boards, but someone's saying that, oh, if Heupel put the gas on the pedal, they would have scored 4 more touchdowns against OU. I don't know if that is accurate, because I do think the OU defense played extremely well. They stayed in the game despite making this quarterback change, bringing in a true freshman, this Michael Hawkins, I believe is his name, if I got that correct. And he comes in having not really played in a game like that, and uh, it shows up big time and leads them to the end zone twice. The first touchdowns that Tennessee defense had given up in 19 quarters. On the other hand, though, I think OU fans, there's some concern about the rushing game. Yeah, you played against an incredible defense, but 36 yards rushing, 22 of those coming from your quarterback, that needs to be addressed. But speaking of defense, the OU defense forced 2 fumbles. The Tennessee defense forced 4 fumbles. Both defenses had 3 sacks. If you like defense, that was the game for you. It had
Absolutely.
a amazing storyline with Heupel coming back home,
Mm-hmm.
and he kept a lot of things close to the vest. But this win meant a lot to him.
Absolutely.
Nico presenting him the game ball at the end of the game. This game just had everything. I
Yep.
was not disappointed uh, in one bit. I thought this was a terrific game. Both schools looked terrific. I think big things are ahead for, of course, for Tennessee and for OU as they continue their foray into the SEC part of the season, the schedule.
Yeah, it is pretty awesome that when you look at everything that went into the game and the fact that it was in Norman, and this was truly a positive, in a positive way, a spectacle, a bright shining moment for the SEC, and for that to be produced for the first time that the SEC an SEC game is played in Norman, pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think Norman should be proud right now.
Absolutely,
How about
absolutely.
your how about your second takeaway, Darren?
Thank you for asking. I am going to, like I said earlier, I'm going to make a couple of predictions in my second and third takeaway. I think I'm pretty confident in three teams within the SEC that will make the 12 team playoff. And so I'm going to go ahead and throw those out. The first one is a pretty obvious one. I don't think this will shock anyone, and that will be the Georgia Bulldogs. Yeah, I know it's shocking, but yes, I think Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs will find their way into a 12-team playoff, whether they're on a 40, is it a 46 game regular season game winning streak or whatever. They're going to find their way into the 12-team playoff. To me, the two teams that have really stepped up and said, look at what we're doing, and I think what they're doing screams that they're going to make it into the 12-team playoff. And the first of those teams is Tennessee. I think when Tennessee, on their first real challenge, goes into Norman and comes out with a win, that tells you a lot of what you need to know about Tennessee and where they are for the season, or so far this season. Now, when you take that and add to that the remainder of their schedule, where their road games are at Arkansas, at Georgia, at Vanderbilt. I feel like I'm missing one. Or no, maybe they only have three. So they only have three road games left in the remainder of the season, and one of those is Georgia, and the other two are Arkansas, which may be a little bit of tougher game than we thought maybe going into the season, but still, I think it's very favorable for Tennessee. And then at Vanderbilt, let's pretend that doesn't happen. So you do have Alabama at home, which is fantastic, and so that's your main challenge at home. So if you look at the remainder of their schedule, even if they lose those two games we just highlighted, Georgia and Alabama, you're still 10-2. You still have a strong road win against Oklahoma. You still have what could end up looking like a really nice road win against Arkansas, depending on what the remainder of their season turns out to be. I think this is a Tennessee team that is proven they're in the right place to be a playoff team, and their schedule sets up for them to move right into that spot, even if it's 10-2. So I think Tennessee is the second team, and the third team. Again, people might not think this makes sense because they haven't really played anybody yet, but I think the other team that will make the playoff this year is Ole Miss. I think this team is with Lane Kiffin is set up. They do have some tough games left, but they've proven themselves in a win at Wake Forest. Don't really know what that'll shake out to look like at the end of the schedule or at the end of the season, but it's a nice Power Four road win. They did what they needed to do against Kentucky, obviously. Then when it comes to road games that they've got left, they've got at LSU, which, Ben, not to be personal, but I don't think that seems as daunting of a task right now as it did during preseason conversation, because of the defensive struggles, and especially with not knowing right now what's going to be going on with Harold Perkins. That's obviously going to have an effect on the LSU defense. So that's their toughest road game that they have left on the schedule, and then they've got Georgia and Oklahoma at home. So even if they lose to LSU and split those two home games, where let's say they lose to Georgia and beat Oklahoma, again, they're sitting at 10-2 with wins over either Oklahoma or Georgia, with a Power Four road win with Wake Forest. I think that sets up an SEC team to be in the playoff. So the three I'm willing to say right now, 4 weeks in, these three teams will be in the playoff are Georgia, Tennessee, and Ole Miss.
Interesting picks, Darren. It's hard. I mean, we're going into week 5. I'm not sure, but hey, I am though about your comments about LSU. I am keeping receipts on that. So, uh,
We've got a couple more weeks and we'll talk about that more. What's your second takeaway?
my second takeaway is the quiet rise of Garret Nussmeier.
Mm.
Not many people are talking about him. Certainly, I have not heard his name mentioned in Heisman conversation.
Mm-mm.
I've not heard really nationally people talking about the season he is having. Darren, there are only two quarterbacks right now in the SEC who have more than 1,000 yards passing. One is an obvious Jackson Dart from Ole Miss, and no, the second isn't Nico. You think about all the great quarterbacks in the SEC. It's not Milrow. It's not Carson Beck. It's Garret Nussmeier. Nussmeier is also number one in the SEC in touchdown passes with 13, in completions with 113, and he's only out of 160 pass attempts, he's only thrown two interceptions. So he's 113 out of 160, which is a 71% rate. The guy is quietly having a great season in a year when the offense, there was worries about, well, they lost Malik Neighbors, they lost Brian Thomas, they lost Jaden Daniels. Who's going to replace all of that? Nussmeier is stepping up. The offense is playing very well, even not only losing those players, but losing their offensive coordinator. So I like what I'm seeing from the offense. Of course, there's things to be improved on, but Nussmeier is really playing a quality level, a high level of football that I think people need to talk about more often. And I think as we get in the SEC play, we'll continue to see him. He's a veteran quarterback. He's a smart quarterback, and he's having a really good season up to this point. Now, when they face the big dogs, we're going to get to see just how
Mm-hmm.
good he is. But I think he's going to keep them in games, as you alluded to. The LSU defense is still a work in progress. So good thing that Nussmeier is playing so well right now.
Yeah, that's a great point, a great takeaway. I think he is a he's very much going under the radar, which is crazy when you look at his numbers. I think it's a great point.
How about your third takeaway, Darren?
All right, since I started on the positive end, I'll end on the I won't call it negative, but how about realistic end? On the other end of the spectrum, from guaranteeing three teams will make it to the playoff, I also have three teams I'm willing to guarantee are not going to be playing any form of postseason play. And again, on this one, I'll start with the obvious. I think there was preseason, people thought there's no way this team will make it to a bowl. Then the first couple of weeks, they made people go, maybe. And then, as much as it pains me to say it, well, Vanderbilt's going to Vanderbilt. And so I don't think, I think what they've shown, like I said earlier, I think Missouri kept them in that game more so than Vanderbilt stayed in the game or kept themselves in the game. And I think we're going to see the defensive struggles and the offense, negative one total offense or negative 2 yards total offense in the second quarter. You're not going to win much when you do things like that. And I think we're going to continue to see that struggle for the remainder of the season. I do not see a pathway to 6 wins for anything that is for Vanderbilt anyway this year or for the remainder of the season. So Vanderbilt doesn't make it to a bowl game, even though Florida had what they had with Mississippi State game this weekend. I think that unfortunately tells us how big of a struggle the Mississippi State rebuild is, more so than shows us anything positive happening in Florida right now. And you look at the remainder of their schedule and rut row. So I don't think Florida makes it to 6 wins. Unfortunately for Billy Napier, that'll be the end of that regime, as we talked about last week there in Florida. And I also think that there is just not a path to 6 wins in a bowl game for Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers. When you look at what happened to them having Arkansas at home, losing that game by 10 points, and then and having to play multiple quarterbacks because they pulled a quarterback last week because he just wasn't playing that well, just to turn around and say, oops, our bad, we'll give him a try, try again, and put him back in. And they did, and he did play better than he did last week, but still nothing to jump up and down and write home about. I mean, he did end up with a little over 200 yards passing. Peyton Thorne did, but still. And then now, when you look at the remainder of their schedule, I mean, their next three games are Oklahoma at home, Georgia at home, and at Missouri. And then they end the season with Texas A&M at home and at Alabama. They've got some games that might be winnable, there in the middle, or with Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and of course our good friends just down the street in Monroe, the ULM Warhawks. They do have them coming up in November. But I mean, Kentucky is on the road. They've got to go to Kroger Field. If I'm an Auburn fan, I don't feel very good about that. So I don't see a path for Hugh Freeze and these Auburn Tigers to get to 6 wins. So I think they're that third team that will not be making it to a bowl game this year.
Mm. Dashing people's dreams and hopes, Darren.
Well, if there's anything we at Vanderbilt are good at, that's it. So
You want others to share the misery.
exactly. Come on, join the anti-party. That's it's not a party.
Your team stinks too.
Yeah, come on in.
Gutsy picks on both ends for to say who's going to make it and who's not going to make it. Darren, I applaud you as we are only in week 5 that you're already putting it out there.
Well, like you said, we'll keep receipts and maybe discuss it at a later date. So, what's your third
Perfect.
takeaway?
Third takeaway is simply SEC domination.
Mm.
The latest AP poll came out. 6 of the 7 top spots are SEC teams. Ohio State's the only team from another conference to crack that top 5. Really, Darren, the SEC is the greatest threat to the SEC. As SEC cranks up and teams play each other, they're going to hand each other losses, and that's just a testament to how strong the conference still remains. I know there's issues with teams in the conference. You mentioned Vanderbilt's continued struggles, Florida uncharacteristically still struggling, Mississippi State going through what's going to be an incredibly painful season, but and then they lose Blake Shapen, their starting quarterback. But good news out of Starkville, $8 million donation to the football program, which was the second largest ever. So there are people who are believing in it, and I really believe. And of course, I'm not a Mississippi State fan, so I understand they're coming from a different place. I really think Jeff Levy is going to get that program going in a good direction. So you have some teams that are really struggling right now in the SEC, but on the other hand, the it's just as strong as it's ever been. You look at these schools and you compare them against non-conference, out of conference foes, I should say, non-conference. Yeah, yeah. SEC is continuing to dominate, and I think
Yep.
they're going to dominate when it comes to the 12-team playoff as well.
I think that's a great. Obviously, I'm in total agreement.
Which is why other conferences argued so vociferously about making sure that their conferences would be represented because they know that. They know that. So,
Yeah, if I'm the ACC, I'm making that argument. That's for sure.
as we conclude looking at last week, I should say, and looking ahead to this week, uh, 4 down territory. We look back at the past week and we give a brown bag to a brown bag's just embarrassing.
Mhm.
So it's not an award you want to receive.
Right.
And we also have for this upcoming week a sure thing pick and an upset pick. So, Darren, let's dive on in. Who is your sure thing pick for week 5?
Well, I, in error just a few minutes ago, said something about Ole Miss doing what they needed to do with Kentucky, and I was thinking ahead and referred to it as past tense. So I apologize for that, but that's because I was already foreshadowing what my sure thing pick was going to be. I think Kentucky heads into the very uncomfortable confines of Vaught Hemingway Stadium and go, uh oh. Our defense is our strong suit, and they're going to kill us. I think that's going to be what happens in this. That is a sure thing. I think Ole Miss is very unfortunate what they're going to do to Kentucky as with a home field advantage. What about you? What's your sure thing?
I've got Texas.
Oh,
Mississippi State, just it's painful.
oof.
And we'll see what the final score is in Austin, but I expect Texas to win big.
Yep.
How about your upset pick?
Well, I am. I know the Aggies are ranked, but I am. Man, I'm just a fan of Sam Pittman. and everything he does. And I want it to go well for him so bad. I'm going to try to will it for Sam Pittman. Nothing against Aggies. We have good friends that are Aggie fans. Nothing against them, but I just want it so bad for. I'm going to see if I can help him along the way and will it into existence. I'm going to go Arkansas as my upset pick. It's a neutral field there in Dallas or in Arlington at AT&T Stadium. So I think on a neutral field, Arkansas does what they need to do and pulls off the upset. How about you?
I'm going with Alabama. I hate to pick against Kirby Smart.
Mm-hmm.
It usually doesn't go very well. This is a huge game as far as the new regime in Alabama, the Kalen DeBoer regime.
Yep.
Now they have an opportunity to show Alabama is right where we want them to be. We're not going away. We're going to be challenging for the SEC title. They've got Georgia coming to Tuscaloosa. Again, the fact that we had Tennessee and Oklahoma last week, and now we get Georgia and Alabama this week. We're getting into the best part of the
Yeah,
season. These
absolutely.
huge matchups with epic ramifications, and I think Alabama pulls it off. You
Mm-hmm.
got an experienced quarterback in Jalen Milroe. He's not going to blink twice at that Georgia defense. I think with the home field advantage, Alabama pulls out a win.
Nice. That'll be speaking of keeping receipts. Talk about that next week, and you pulled off that. You called that one. That's nice.
And much to my dismay, we're probably going to hear a lot of Dixieland delight.
Yeah, I would say so.
Darren, how about your brown bag from last week?
Well, I'm going to go with, um, yeah, I'm going to go with Auburn as my brown bag pick. I don't want to seem like I'm piling on them like I have maybe it looks like I did by Kentucky in the past. I don't want to just pile on one team on any particular week. But you look at it from a coaching perspective, from a player development perspective, from an on the field product perspective, nothing for this Auburn team is going as is intended. And I say that it's off the rails kind of the way it's going. It's not just going as it not going as intended. It's really kind of an off the rails thing to have all of the preseason conversation about the difference you were going to see in this team this year with all the changes that were made to, in my opinion, what is going to end up being a less than 6 win, 5 wins or less for the season. That unfortunately that's a brown bag moment for me. I think that's kind of where Auburn is right now. Who's your brown bag pick?
Darren, I'm sorry. Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, I think you used the phrase earlier, Vanderbilt being Vanderbilt.
Mm-hmm.
They started off great upset against Virginia Tech. They were looking strong. I don't know what happened at Georgia Southern.
Oh, have mercy.
And then they go to Missouri, a team that many people were picking to finish near the top of the rankings in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
And they should have won that game.
Yep.
They played well enough to win. They had Missouri on the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hate it for Clark Lee because I do think he's doing a good job there. It's not producing the results that you and other Vanderbilt fans want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe in moral victories. I don't. Oh yeah, we played them tough. Look at us. Yeah, that's what teams from other conferences say.
Exactly.
Oh look, we only got beat by an SEC team by 14 points. We showed we could play with. No, you. Well, no, there. I don't believe in those moral victories.
Mm-mm.
I do think there's optimism, cause for optimism with this, the way the offense is transforming at Vanderbilt and the way they played against Missouri. So, uh, but you've got to seal the deal if you want to finally shake that monkey off your back. And so that's why I'm going to give Vanderbilt the brown bag. You've got to take those opportunities
Mm-hmm.
and make the most of them, because if you don't, my friend Darren's blood pressure is going to continue to run high. He's not going to sleep at night. He's going to be stressed out all the time, and I'm concerned about his health. So, Coach Lee and Vanderbilt, would you pull it together for my friend Darren, please?
Please. Well, so well said. So well said.
I got your back. I got your
I
back.
appreciate that, man.
One more item left to watch, and that is our post-game quote of the week. Darren, you found a good one from the OU Tennessee game. Josh Heupel, who doesn't show a lot of emotion, seemed to be fighting back the emotion in his.
This thing coming back to normal was never about me. It was not. But I appreciate you all having a little extra for me. All right, I love it. Bow your heads, grab two.
Hey, we did that for you, Coach. This game ball for you.
Thank you again for watching. Remember to hit that subscribe button so you stay notified anytime new episodes come out, our regular Tuesday episodes, as well as bonus episodes. And be sure to join us in our college pick'em. The information is down below. Darren is pointing to where you can find the link for that information. We'd love to have you a part of that. We love your comments. Thank you for watching. Subscribe. Tell your friends. We'll see you next Tuesday. Until then, y'all take care.
Have a great week. Thank you for making the Brew and Shaver Sports Podcast your go-to sports show. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our show if you haven't already. Your feedback is important. Let us know what you think about this week's show. Send an email to brewandshavers@gmail.com or text to our text line 318-390-3599. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you again for listening to the Brew and Shaver Sports Podcast. See you next week.